how to recognize when you're in a negative pattern, and ways that you can start to take action to moving out of that negative pattern, and so that you are experiencing a lot more happiness, fulfillment, joy, and love in your day-to-day life, right? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Whitley Jane, and I am a spiritual coach, guide, and teacher. If you're new to the channel, hey, welcome. And so this week, I want to focus on a topic that I find isn't talked a lot about. And so what I really want to speak to is talking about negative patterns, how to recognize when you're in a negative pattern, and ways that you can start to take action to moving out of that negative pattern, and so that you are experiencing a lot more happiness, fulfillment, joy, and love in your day-to-day life, right? And so a couple of things, that typically happen when you are caught up in a negative pattern are things like feeling stuck, feeling unfulfilled, feeling frustrated, antsy, bored, unfulfilled, dissatisfied. These are all really, really good key indicators whether or not you're in a negative pattern. And so I want to speak a little bit about what a negative pattern is, how to recognize if you're in one, and then how to break out of that, so that again you're experiencing a whole lot of better, joyful things in your life. So this week's episode is actually inspired by a fellow YouTuber. You can check them out. Their YouTube channel is called Hindzsight, HINDZSIGHT. Really cool channel. He speaks a lot about, self-discovery, self-love, and different things. I just actually came across him just recently, and really love his vibe and the content he's putting out. So make sure to check him out. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. So first and foremost, what is a negative pattern? Why is this something that's not even talked about that often? I don't understand why it's not, because I see so many people, and I have been there so many times throughout my journey, getting caught in these negative patterns. And so what is that exactly? A negative pattern is basically just a reflection of what is going on internally, and it's an external reflection. Your reality is a reflection of what is going on internally. And so a negative pattern can be basically when you're going throughout your day-to-day and it just feels like it's just redundant, and it's constant, and you're kind of battling with negative thoughts, negative feelings, and it just often feels as though life is really gloomy. It feels boring, it feels redundant. It can feel negative. You can feel anxious. You can feel angry. You can feel on edge, anxious. There's so many different things that you can feel, lots of different emotions that you can experience when you're caught in a negative pattern. And so oftentimes what a negative pattern is, it is basically a direct result of the thoughts, the feelings, the actions that you are giving energy toward for a duration of time. And so if you think about, and I talk about this a lot, everything is energy. And so if you are giving out negative energy on a consistent basis, what do you think is going to happen? A lot of negative energy is going to come back. It's going to reflect back to you. A lot of negative energy is going to basically create almost like a negative reality for you, right? So a really great example of this, I love giving this example, is you wake up late, you hit that snooze button, and you're already off to kind of a rocky start, and all of a sudden you're rushing around trying to get to work or wherever it is on time. You're running behind schedule, you jump in your car, you hit every red light, and you're stressing because you're late, and then all of a sudden, you know, somebody cuts you off in traffic. You get to the office, you're pouring your cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you spill it down the front of your shirt. Like it's like almost like a snowball effect happens throughout your day, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, like what happened? Like my day is just gone to shit, right? It's that negative energy that keeps creating a negative reality for yourself. And so if you think about that, right, think about giving off that negative, feeding into negative thoughts, feeding into fear, feeding into just like that type of energy. It's going to reflect back that negative reality. And what happens when you get that negative reality? It doesn't feel good, right? It's really hard to feel good when you're experiencing a negative reality. And so what happens is it just continues to almost take on that snowball effect, right? Because then you're just giving more negative energy. And what happens is that can carry on for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, and depending on how asleep you are and how disconnected you are from yourself, that can carry on for years. And so when we talk about negative patterns, we've got some people out there who've been playing on a negative pattern in their life for years, right? And we don't want that to happen. But one thing is for sure is that a negative pattern isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's there to teach you something, right? But the more connected we are to ourselves, the more connected we are to our essence of who we truly are, the easier it is for us to recognize, oh, hey, this is like a negative pattern that is beginning to kind of build out. And you can recognize it, you can begin to shift and change it. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do we recognize when we're in a negative pattern, negative loop, and then we'll talk about how can we start to take some small little actions to being able to break that negative pattern. So a couple of key indicators of like how to recognize if you're stuck in a negative pattern. A couple emotions, like our emotions are such an amazing and powerful guiding tool, like guiding compass for us in our lives, because how we feel is little clues of what might need to change in our life. And so some of those emotions that are going to come to the surface when you're caught in a negative loop or pattern would be feeling a sense of like dread, a feeling of like dread, a feeling of hopelessness, feeling of maybe anger, frustration, fear, anxiety. Some of the other things that you could feel are boredom, dissatisfaction, unfulfillment, a lack of happiness, a lack of joy. And so if we think about all of those things that I just described, a lot of them are kind of vibrating on a negative spectrum, not so much a positive spectrum. And so if you know that you're feeling a lot of these negative emotions, you can begin to look at yourself and say, okay, am I caught up in a negative pattern? And what are some of the thoughts that you're thinking? What are some of the things that you're doing that keep feeding into this energy, right? So those are some really key indicators emotionally to really like understand if you're caught in a negative pattern. And how do we break out of it, right? So I want to talk a little bit about like how do we break from that? And it's actually easier than you might think it is, right? And depending on how long you've been in this too, though, right? Like if people are like trying to break a pattern after so many years or so many months, it can feel a little bit challenging in the beginning because your mind, your body has been so programmed to think and feel a certain way, to do actions in a certain way that have really just become like almost autopilot in your body, in your energy, right? So how do we break this? How do we break the negative loop so that we can create a new, more positive cycle? So a couple of things are breaking the habits, breaking the loop, right? How do we break a loop? We change the way that we have been thinking or behaving, right? And so how do we do these things? So one thing that is like extremely powerful is changing the way that you're thinking. So in the beginning, depending on where you're at in your journey, in the beginning, this can be a bit of a challenge to recognize when you're having a negative thought and then being able to redirect that negative thought into a positive thought. And so, maybe you're constantly caught up in this negative thought pattern of playing out the past, replaying past mistakes, replaying past things that have been said to you or that you have said to other people, right? And so what happens is you're constantly recreating a scenario in your mind that is attached to the past, no longer the present or the future. And so it's robbing you from having more joy, having more love and good positive feelings in your life. And so a practice that you can do is when you start to have these negative thoughts, it's bringing yourself back to center and redirecting those thoughts into a more positive thought. And so one way that you can do this is redirecting your thoughts into gratitude. And so if you catch yourself, in the car and you're replaying, what your boss said to you last week and it really ticked you off, and you wish that you had handled it this way, and you're playing out the whole scenario, right? Like these are just like these it's crazy how much people attach themselves to past things, right? But if you can redirect that energy into a more positive thing, and I like to use gratitude, is stop yourself and redirecting into, I'm grateful. Like, I am grateful I have a car right now. I am grateful that I have working legs right now. I am grateful that I have arms and hands. I am grateful that I can see. I am grateful for the home that I have. So redirecting your thoughts into a positive thinking pattern, it's actually training your mind, it's training your body into encompassing a brand new, more positive behavior. And when you do this, you start to break that pattern, start to break the negativity in that cycle, right? And so again, like I said, everything's energy. And so the energy that you put out is the energy that you get back, right? So all of a sudden you're starting to put out some positive energy. Well, the direct reflection of putting out positive energy is getting a positive reality. And so you start to break that cycle. If you can do this every single day for the next few days, what you have is a brand new reality. You're no longer experiencing an old reality of negative experiences coming into your current reality. What you have is a brand new reality that is based on positive experiences. And so that's just one way of doing it, through the way that you manage your mind and manage your thoughts. There are tons of other things that you can be doing, and it's really just recognizing what are those negative things that you have been doing, and what can you do differently today to break the cycle. It's all about breaking old habits, old patterns, old ways of thinking, so that you can create a brand new reality, a brand new experience for yourself. If you thought this video was actually helpful, let me know below. And if you're interested in hearing part 2, because I can definitely elaborate more and go a little deeper on this topic for sure. If you're interested in hearing part 2 on this, where I can dive in a little bit more about this, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to. With that, guys, I will see you guys next week, and have a blessed day. Bye for now.